All right, joining us now, she is one of the greats of all time when it comes to South Florida softball, USF, international, you name it. She's a four-time AAC Pitcher of the Year, three-time All-American at USF. Of course, I think has almost 40 records at USF. Pitches for the Great Britain national team. Also pitches in the Pro Japanese League. Just got drafted with the sixth pick overall in the inaugural AUSL League. She'd be drafted by the Talons. She's coming off a year where she finished fourth at Athletes Unlimited. Have I left anything off yet in this rundown here?
No, I don't think so. Other than maybe like first daughter, like you want my social security number. What else do you
Great
want?
Britain Hall of Famer. Great
Great
Britain
Britain
Hall
Hall
of
of
Famer. You got
Famer. That's been a
inducted.
new
We talked,
one.
folks. I speak of Georgina Corrick. That's the long intro there for you. How you doing?
Good, phenomenal. Elo, how are you?
Good. I am loving this. You've been on every year since I believe your junior year. I want to say. I think you've been on every year since we've following you since your career there because you're always doing stuff. Just give an idea for those that may not be aware. What is your calendar year looks like? Because I'm having trouble keeping track. I hope you're being able to keep track between your time in the States, but then you're also overseas. You're playing in Japan. I know you've been playing elsewhere. So just give the audience an idea of what your calendar year looks like.
So I think I play pretty much 10 months out of the year nowadays. If I was to go pretty much January through December, this last calendar year, I did about a month in Australia down in for January, which is their summer, of course. Went and played in, it's called the Gilly Shield. It's kind of their national tournament for all of their states across all of Australia. Came home, had about February with my parents, and then left for Japan. So that would have been March, April, May, and June. Flew pretty much directly back from Japan to Chicago for Athletes Unlimited. Obviously, this last summer wasn't able to join them for AUX in Wichita, at Wichita State, but was able to be there for pretty much the entire Chicago season. Went directly from Chicago out into Ostrava in the Netherlands, I believe, for GB. So that was about a week and a half that we had out there. Came second behind Italy, was an amazing tournament as usual. I think my 11th year now with GB, and then pretty much flew directly back from Ostrava to Japan. Did September, October, and a little bit of November over with Japan. Came back, I want to say second week in November, so I got to do Christmas and Thanksgiving and everything with the parents. And then again went back to Australia 1st of January.
That's unbelievable. That's a lot of mileage. By the way, this week again, into you can listen to that beautiful voice of Georgina Corrick. She'll be on the broadcast this week for the South Florida Showdown. USF will host it. They're hosting Michigan. She'll be on the call for that. Wisconsin on Friday night with Ryan Urquhart. She'll be on, I believe, the Detroit game. And then, of course, Ryan will be on for every game. I got to make sure I get that plug in there before Ryan gets mad at me as he's listening to this. We'll talk about that tournament in a moment. But I can't, I mean, that is an incredible itinerary that you do. But you enjoy this. We've been on before. You love traveling. So does that, I mean, are you living a dream in that regard that you get to play and visit all these different places?
I mean, I can't speak highly enough of it. This is now my third year playing professionally. I know there's people like Megan Wiggins who've done this for upwards of a decade, coming up on 15 years now. It still feels the same to me as when I was like 10. It's one of those things that like, especially every new league that I do, it feels like a lot when I talk about it in kind of a block calendar way, but everything feels really new and exciting because as much as you're traveling, you're also like meeting new people. So I'm in Japan. I get to meet all of my new Japanese teammates. I play over there with Savannah Jaquish, who actually has been drafted with me for the Talons for the AUSL season. I get to meet through my Japanese translator, all of my teammates and all of the other amazing American players that play in the Japanese leagues. I come back and get to hang out with some of the best softball players in the world again with Athletes Unlimited. Go to Australia, you get to meet some amazing athletes over in Australia that you may never get the chance to because they're on the other side of the world. So as much as I love the work and it's hard work, don't get me wrong, it's 5 to 6 days a week of hard work, but it's the people that make it really worth it. So I don't mind so much living out of a suitcase. The traveling part almost is secondary to the fact of like you're going around the world and you're meeting all of these amazing people that you would never otherwise have the opportunity to meet. Kind of like
Describe
yourself.
describe softball globally. Obviously, everybody knows the passion that Japan has for softball. That's well documented. But Australia, also passionate, which is significant because the 2032 Olympics are scheduled for Brisbane, Australia. So a lot of belief is that the softball will remain in the Olympics. We would think in Australia. I'm sure you're putting in a good word over there during your time there. But speak of the Netherlands. Just speak of all the other places you've been to. From as far as how is softball received and perceived globally?
I think it's amazing because I told you I'm coming up on my 10th or 11th year now with Great Britain softball. And so that's obviously the European aspect of softball, right? When you think of European softball, you're going to think primarily of Italy, of the Netherlands, of the Czech Republic, of those countries that have been really dominant in that space for so long. And every single one of them has a slightly different play style. You know, the Dutch are going to be a little bit more powerful. The Italians use a lot of speed, are starting to break a little bit more into the power side of things. The Czech Republic have always had dominant pitching, right? So you kind of like go to all these different places and see the things that make them very, very strong. And now I've gotten the opportunity to go play in Japan, which Japanese pitching is next level. It's elite, but it's their defense that really sets them aside. I think if anyone's ever seen a Japanese softball game, the way that they play defense is absolutely surreal. And they're so fast. The pace of the game is quick. They play music 24/7. So even when I'm pitching, there's drums playing, someone's playing the trombone. Like I never really get a chance to calm down. And that's the way that they like to play the game. They like it to be almost distracting and loud and fast paced because that's the way that they play. And they train so well and they train to perfection that when you're playing these games, it feels like I'm, on the edge of my seat the entire time when I'm pitching the game, which I have always felt really, really at peace in the mound. So that has been a big adjustment for me. And then I think the Australian game of softball is very different as well because their swing styles are going to be very, very different from what we expect of the American swing styles. So I think a little bit more terrestrial styles with softball players over here in the States. You're going to see like a lot of getting into their legs, a lot of big loads. The Australian style is not that much. They're a little bit closer to the Japanese style where they're a little bit more aerial. They may be a little bit more handsy, a lot of just like barrel control, but with the potential for power that we've kind of seen from, the Stacey Porters, from the Australian side of things. So especially as someone who I'm a huge buff of the game and of the history of the game, it's so cool to kind of go to all these places and have these like legends that you've seen and see that they are almost like caricatures of their style of play from their sport and from their region. And it's cool to not only have to like see them, but then for me to pitch against them. And I have to change the way that I pitch because the styles are so different all the different places that I go.
I was going to ask you about that. How much has that influenced now you as a player overall when you come back to the States? Are you a different pitcher, or what have you picked up from all the different regions here into your own game?
I think if nothing else, I have picked up more appreciation for the way that people continue playing the sport through time. So I think I was really fortunate at college at USF that I threw a lot of innings. And that was something that I had been built for through my travel ball and everything. And then when I got to college, because of my pitching coaches and the way that Jessica Moore and Ken Erickson worked my mechanics, I had the ability to go the distance, right? But when you come into the pro sphere, a lot of that training and the absolute sheer volume of work that you would have done in college doesn't really exist in the pro sphere. That's all self-managed. So a lot of my growth now has not only been in actual the physical side of pitching, but in my ability to motivate myself to continue to grow, right? And so like when I'm in Japan, I don't have the choice. You're training 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, right? And that for me is more management. I'm managing how much I'm throwing the ball, how I'm, how many pitches I'm throwing, the way that I'm pitching against these Japanese style players. I'm going to have to try to use a lot more changeups. I'm not going to blow the ball past them. Yukiko Ueno of the Japanese national team is 38 throwing 76 miles an hour. I can't compete with that. I have to be spinnier. I have to try and change timings, and that's where I'm successful. And so when I come back over to the States, I almost get excited again because I don't throw my rise ball in Japan. I really don't I don't throw pitches that were my dominant pitches in college. I am primarily a changeup pitcher who tries to work the ball off of the zone, right? I'm not breaking them up and down. I've got to break them left and right and with speed. And so that's what I've kind of learned a little bit more from my game. And then having to come back to the US with whatever time I have left to train and compete and make sure that I'm staying healthy.
I mean, you've got a. It's funny because you mentioned you've been with Great Britain national team for a decade, yet you're just entering your prime here, and you're learning still, like in your craft. Like I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you wanted to, you could probably pitch for another decade or so if you wanted to, right? I'm not saying you will or whatever you want to do, but do you feel that way? Do you almost feel almost even stronger and more, maybe even sharper, more mentally within the game that you probably felt like, man, why didn't I know this like when I was, my senior year, right? But that's the beauty of the pro game and the international game.
Yeah, and I always joke with my friends, and especially the same ones that are like, when are you gonna quit, man? When are you gonna like get a real person job? When are you gonna like hang up your cleats and stop living out of a suitcase? And I'm like, you guys don't understand. My prefrontal cortex just came in. Like I didn't have that in college. And once you hit 25, you're like, oh my gosh, the way that I think about the world and the way that I see things is so different. And you surround yourself with like-minded people. So I'm sure that like anyone who has joined a workforce or anything, you're always going to get along better with people that kind of think the same way as you, and all of you guys kind of become an echo chamber. And so it's really cool because now entering the pro sphere, you're only going to be surrounded with people that also feel that way, that want to keep playing for the next 10, 20 years, that want to be the seeds that kind of grow the sport for the young players while also being the flowers that they can look at and be like, hey, I worked really hard to get here and open these doors so that you guys can walk through them with us because we're also putting in the work. We're also making it our dream the same way that we want it to be your dream. And so when you surround yourself with people like the Megan Framos of the world, the Mariah Mazons, the Mia Sky Davidsons, the people that not only continue playing professionally because they love playing professionally, but they think about the game at such a high level and they're constantly learning about the game on such a high level, you guys get a really good opportunity to just stay together and almost hold hands and be each other's strengths. Because there are times I've got friends that are playing in that Mexican league now, that it's very, very difficult. You take for granted the time that you had in college where you just play one game a day. Professionally, you might only play 1 to 2 games a week. And suddenly entering a league, maybe like the Japanese league, like the Mexican league, we are playing 4 or 5 games a week. And that's a new mentality for a lot of young players and a lot of older players that had kind of almost grown complacent in what we do. Even though we say we love it, and we do, you got to walk the walk, right? If you love it so much, are you going to play 4 or 5 games? Are you going to show up and compete and get better every single year? And that, I think, for me has been the biggest thing with a decade of GB softball is being there when GB was at a lower end in Europe and helping be a part of the culture and the growth of that program to where it is now considered the third or the second highest program in all of Europe. And then can I continue to push the players that even if they don't play with me, even if I hang up my cleats, will they continue to think that way and play that way and learn that way? Because we helped set the precedent for that.
No doubt. And we've talked already previously in your previous appearances. 2028 is a goal for you. You want to lead Great Britain to that Olympic berth and play it's the Los Angeles Olympics, but it's going to be played in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when all that like came out about all that stuff? Is that a big deal to you about the move to OKC? The facilities obviously was a big part of the storyline there, but I'm fascinated from you because you've played all over the world. Is that like a big deal? No deal? What was your reaction to that?
I'm always a very like I always play devil's advocate, which my friends get sometimes a little frustrated with. As a player, I think it's a little bit devastating to not be in LA for the LA 2020 Olympics, right? A massive part of the Olympic experience is not only working hard enough to become the Olympic athlete, but to get to the location and share that experience with all of the other Olympic athletes across all of the sports. And I think it's disheartening, I think, for a lot of softball players because they wanted to be where the Olympics are, right? It's always really difficult to be the sport that's off-site. I know that they've spoken to us and they said, hey, we're going to fly you guys in for the opening ceremonies, for the closing ceremonies, make sure that you guys are there for the symbolic aspects of the Olympics, but it will be played at OKC. But from the other side of things, I can also see that it is a facility that has the means to house and then be built to house something along the lines of an Olympic size fan. And so I know I was at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, right? I was there in that stadium and it was a baseball size stadium holding thousands upon thousands of people and every seat was filled. I can't honestly say right now that there's a lot of those caliber of softball stadiums in the US. I think it could have been a good opportunity for LA 2028 to build another one of those, but I think it's always difficult being the person on the outside saying, "Hey, I think you should funnel millions and millions more dollars into this complex," when there is already a complex that can house that kind of staff because we do it every single year for the Women's College World Series. So I'm a little bit on the devil's advocate side of as an athlete, I want to be in LA. I want to be there so badly. I want to share that experience with other Olympic athletes who've worked just as hard as we have, if not harder, to be there. But I understand from a committee aspect that it's the choice that they felt was the safest to ensure that they have the facilities to house the athletes in a way that they deserve. You're not putting them in temporary places. You're not having to try and bring all these people into LA when you don't have the facilities for them. So I think it's always difficult, but from a committee's perspective, I get it.
Well, from your time in Australia, is there any talk about softball, the Olympics in Brisbane? Has that even been discussed? Is there facilities out there in Australia that could host it from what you've seen or heard?
I mean, I think we have to remember that historically there have been a lot of Olympics held in Australia. I was playing for Victoria, so I was playing in Melbourne. Anywhere you walk throughout Melbourne, obviously the Australian Open was in town when I was there, so I got to walk through and see some of the tennis facilities, and there are Olympic rings from previous Olympics. When I went to Sydney last year with my friend, I'm looking, you're seeing the remnants of the Sydney Olympics from years and years past. So I always think it's really cool that it becomes built into the cities and the cultures of those places for so long. But there is, when I was in Australia, there was a lot of commotion. We're seeing a couple more imports. They call us imports when they ship us in from other places around the world, the US. Catherine Sandercock, Lexi Kilfoyle was also over there playing in Australia.
That's right.
Sarah Willis, actually, going
Yeah,
out.
I saw you two are all buddies, all of us,
Me
best
and Sarah
pals.
were teamies. You go from being, dead on rivals to suddenly playing Fortnite games together, which I love. I love Sarah Willis. But it was really cool because I had a lot of Australian fans come up to me, usually with one of two sides. One, they said, "Hey, it feels weird that you're here," because a lot of the girls that play all year round play to be in that Gilly Shield, right? And they pay money and they train so hard to be in that Gilly Shield. They say, "Hey, it feels a little weird that you'd kind of just like show up for like 2 weeks, throw a bunch of games. Don't know how I feel about it." And I'm like, absolutely. I completely understand. I can understand that perspective. But I had a lot more people come up to me and say, "Hey, it's so cool that softball is so widespread now that we get to bring some of the best softball players in the world here." And don't get me wrong, it's not like the imports came in and were unhittable. Megan Framo's there, Kat Sandercock's there, I'm there, Lexi Kilfoyle's there. Three pitchers who've thrown in the Women's College World Series who throw professionally, and they pitched games and lost. Pitched games and gave up hits, gave up home runs. All of us went in there and did that. And it is important to know that the game continues to develop, right? It's not just that you are a name, you have to continue being an athlete and compete. So I got a good opportunity to talk to some of former girls from Australia who've played in the Olympics, and every single one of them loves the opportunity to keep pushing themselves competitively. And so that's, I think, the big thing that I like, especially when you go over to Australia and see that they are excited, for, the next leg of the Olympic journey. But it starts now. The Olympics in 2028 doesn't start in 2027. It started in 2014 when I first joined GB, and that's what's really important is that it continues to grow and develop over time. Because you want the best athletes in the world at the Olympics. And in order to do that, metal has to sharpen metal.
100% agree. If anybody gives you any issues, just fly me over there. I'll read your resume to them. Like, what are you?
Usually, if
Come on.
anyone gives me issues, I'm tall enough, but all the Australians are big too.
I was
So,
gonna say, yeah, you gotta be careful there. I've been to Sydney as well. Did you get to visit the Opera House while you were there?
I did. Yep,
Wow,
got
I
to do the
got
bridge, got to take the ferry all the way across Sydney Harbor. It's beautiful.
that's pretty cool. And then Melbourne, did you actually go to the Australian Open tennis tournament?
No, we walked by.
Oh,
But I know, I know.
you're killing
Believe
me.
me,
I'm a tennis
I
fan. Oh, I would.
know. And we checked after because Sarah and I just assumed that tickets would be like we couldn't afford them. We thought we were just gonna like find a tall building nearby and hope that we could like look in. And then I checked after and tickets were like $20.
Yes.
And I was like absolutely shooting myself in the foot, so upset that we didn't
Well, it
go.
depends too. Like, I don't know, were you there during the first week or the second week of the tournament? But yeah, I
The
mean,
first week.
yeah, see, the first week's the perfect time to go because there's matches all over these different courts. So
Mhm.
usually the ones that are the most expensive is like if a local Australian's playing, like for example, like Nick Kyrgios when he was playing the opening round, that's expensive, or maybe Novak Djokovic is a big superstar, so that might be a little pricey. But usually the first week's very affordable because they plan like 12, 13 different courts. So you'll find, see, you and Sarah
You're
need to
making
like,
me angrier already. Like
listen,
I'm already so mad about
well,
it.
wait till I see Sarah Willis. I'm going to get on her case about it. I'm like, what are you
Oh, I know we were,
doing?
we were playing Fortnite all morning because we thought we couldn't afford Australian Open tickets. And
All right,
now I'm
well,
mad because
all
because
right.
then we did Victory Royale. What did we do it all for? Nothing.
Nothing. Now, if you two go back there, I demand that that needs to happen now. If
That's
I
the
have to,
goal for next year.
there you go. I'll help you if I have to. On that. So that takes care of the international pro side. But meanwhile, you're also going to be part of history in the States because this upcoming year, it's the inaugural AUSL League, the team format coming into Athletes Unlimited. You were the sixth pick overall in the draft, uh, picked by Lisa Fernandez, the GM. Hello. First of all, what,
Hello.
like, you're picked by one of the GOATs. That's got to be, what was that like when you heard you got drafted there by the Talons?
It was actually unreal, you know? Like I've looked up to Lisa Fernandez probably my entire life. You know, like my dad used to like pull me into his office and be like, "Sit down. We're watching softball YouTube videos." Something that we used to do, you know, together as a family bonding experience. And like 50% of them would have been Lisa Fernandez and just like what she did at UCLA and how she played the game. And then Howard Dobson, obviously, like assistant coach for Team USA, assistant coach, longtime assistant coach at LSU. He's someone that's like an absolute legend of the sport. So to hear them not only like pick me, but then in the following days, like get on the phone with them and speak to them and have her talk about knowing me, about like talking to other people about the way that I play the game, the way that I interact with teammates, and like that for me hit home because I think for a while, like your legends are like not real. You know, they're kind of this like nebulous idea. And then you meet them, I'm like, oh my God, she's a person. And she's so cool and she knows who I am, you know, like it's it was I was sitting on the bed and like kicking my little feet in the air because I was so excited about her calling me and like texting all my friends being like, guess whose number I have in my phone now? Lisa Fernandez. And they're like, give it to me. And I'm like, no. It's so cool.
Well, now I know me texting you congrats that night was very set paled in comparison to getting leads, but that's an awesome honor. What do you think of them now? Finally going with the team concept here, and your thoughts on that, and then they'll still have the individual season after that. But your reaction on this in big year when you not only you got Lisa Fernandez involved, you got the Cat Ostermans involved, Jenny Dawn. I mean, it's a who's who. Stacey Newman. Hold up. What's your thoughts on the AUSL and the team format?
I think from an outsider looking in, you can see how much thought and care has been put in by Kim Ing to build a really successful program. I know we've had a couple kind of rises and then falls of professional softball in the MPF. Obviously, you've seen a little bit more recently as well. And it's something that it's very difficult sometimes to build a softball league because everyone wants to be the guy in charge, right? Everyone wants to be the person who starts the most successful, the next MLB, the next WNBA. And so Kim Ing, I think, especially bringing her over from her success with the Marlins, she knew how to not only build a successful program, but she knew that it was all about the people, right? You have to bring in the people that have been there before, that have the experience. It's not just a name and money, right? It's actual passion, it's actual interest. You've seen Kat Osterman came out of retirement to pitch in the last previous Olympics. You know, like Kelly Crutch coming in and being a part of this program means something because they're people that have been there, have done that, and are buying in, right? It's really, really easy for the athletes to buy in when you can trace it all the way up higher management. You know, I can look at my head coach, I can look at my general manager, I can look at my director of ops, I can look at Sherry Kempf and know that every single one of them wants the success of this league. So I think that's why you saw so many of the greatest and the biggest names in professional softball on that drafting list. And that's why I think it was really devastating and really hard, I think, for those general managers to have to only pick 60 of them, you know, or 48 because there's been spaces left on each team for reserves. And that's, I think, obviously a massive honor for me to be picked as highly as sixth, you know, behind the likes of the Amanda Lorenz, the Megan Faramos, the Lexi Kilfoyles. Obviously saw a lot of pitchers go early because shifting to that league format, which I think it's the right call. I think it's more exciting for people to buy in behind an actual team besides buying in behind an individual. And it allows for the development of team dynamics, which I think everyone loves. Everyone tunes in to watch Oklahoma play because they love the prowess of the Oklahoma team. You know, they like watching UCLA, they like the prowess of the team. Obviously, you're going to have individual players that are superstars and that shine, but they can't do it without the team. And we have to always remember that this is a team-based sport at all times. And so I love that they kept the point system for championship series at the end, All-Star League that they're calling it, All-Star Cup. And that's for the players because the players individually love the points. It feels fun. It feels like playing a video game. But the actual AUSL softball league is for the fans. And that's what I think it should be, is because you can't have one without the other. Fans are not going to come for the athletes that don't love playing the sport, and the athletes aren't going to show up for no fans, right? So I think that Kim has struck a really, really good balance in between all of that, of building a four-team based model that has the potential to expand and become more all-encompassing and bring in more of these amazing athletes that I think got skipped over a little bit in this draft, because how can you only choose 48? You know, how can you only pick 48 softball players out of the entire globe when there's so much talent, there's so many great athletes out there.
Well, and they're going to do a rookie draft too for the collegiates later on there. For those that may not be aware, tell the audience about the calendar and how this is all going to work. That they're going to tune in because they were used to the AUX right after usually the World Series, and then a little bit of a mini break, and then you have the regular individual AU season. But how's the calendar going to look now?
So it's super exciting. We're going to start, I believe our first series starts around June 12th. Or second to third week of June we'll start up. It'll be a summer league. And think about like the Savannah Bananas, right? They travel, they move around a lot. AUSL is adopting a little bit more of a traveling schedule. So probably every other weekend or every third weekend, we'll return to Rosemont and play for Chicago, for Illinois. Obviously, I know that has been difficult for a lot of fans that want to come out and watch, but Rosemont seems really far away. We're going to have other locations. The only one that has been confirmed so far for the public is Wichita State. But we will be traveling around all the way through the month of June. Going to take a small break at the end of June and start of July. So many of the girls in AUSL also play for Team USA. So they're breaking for the international national team competition that happens usually in the summer at that time. And then they'll start back up in July and run all the way through August. So it'll be, I think, upwards of 40 to 50 games that we're going to be playing all summer, probably 4 games-ish a week. So it's going to be a lot of softball. It's going to be really high competition, really high caliber, and we're moving all the way around the US. So if people weren't able to come out and see in Rosemont, they will be able to come out and see now, hopefully, because we're going to be trying to hit a lot of places out in Mountain Time and Central Time and Eastern Time. We're trying to get all the way across the globe, so that all the softball fans that are out there have the opportunity to come out and see people play.
You gonna wear 4 or 22? What number are we wearing? Do
Hasn't
we
been
know yet?
confirmed yet. It's kind of a hot
Oh,
take because obviously Odyssey Alexander, in memoriam of her friend LB at JMU, wore 22 my freshman year coming in. And then Sis Bates, of course, as well. Um, 22 has kind of been a number for me that I'm chasing. In Japan, Savannah Jaquish actually is 22 already. So I've been chasing that 22 for a while. But I've grown pretty attached to 4. So with Sis Bates obviously on the Blaze, but Savannah Jaquish is on my team in the talents. So I'll be interested to see if they have to pick between the two of us who to give 22 to. But I don't know. I don't think I'm winning a fight with Savannah Jaquish.
yeah, I think the vet gets that one on the deal there on that deal. Okay, well, I'm intrigued. We got to work out a deal where, like, if you give me maybe some international gear of yours, maybe I'll get your talents jersey there.
Oh,
I already worked a side deal with Sarah. Like, I got Sarah an AU jersey I purchased.
have you
Now I
got the
took
Bandits shirt for her
no.
yet?
See, now she's gonna hook me up to that. That's the favor. You see what I'm saying?
I
I
know,
hook.
I know the fan shop just opened. I've got some
I
friends and family that already purchased the Talon shirts.
Good promotion right there. You see
Great
promoting it right
promotion.
there.
I
That's
know.
good. I'm just
AU
saying.
Pro Shop
Here,
wide open.
I like that. That's very
I'm nothing
good.
if not a walking advertisement. Let me tell you that.
Hey, and I'm here to help you with that. Trust me, I'm an enabler here. Of course, before you're about to head out to Japan, you've been calling some softball
I
on
have
the
been.
side there, but just becoming tradition there. What is this year now? Third year doing softball?
Yep, third year.
How do you
And
feel you're a different broadcaster today than when you started?
oh my God, I'm so much worse. Actually, my first year that I did broadcasting, I was, very blessed, very lucky that they let me up in the booth. And I was also very fortunate to have Ryan Urquhart in the booth with me as well. I had no formal training. All that I knew was of the softball games that I've watched, which I watch religiously, but there's a difference between watching the games and hearing a professional commentator call and actually being up in the booth and making it happen. So I want to say that first full year that I got commentating under Ryan actually like made me so much better and so much more concise about the way that I speak in my entire life. All of my friends and my family at home were suddenly amazed that I wasn't umming anymore. I like didn't have any rambling run-on sentences anymore. Like I suddenly like knew what I was talking about when I spoke to people. So I think now that I've gone into year 3, It's like riding a bike. I usually only do about a month of it before I head off to Japan anyway. So it feels like very fast to get back into the swing of it before I leave it. But it's always amazing having the staff that I have on ESPN at USF with Reiner Cart in the booth, obviously. But I feel a lot more confident about the way that I call and speak about games. And I think it's very helpful for me to remember how young these athletes are, especially when I get back up in there, because I get to talk about their growth and the way that they are changing themselves through the sport. So I love the way that you can commentate and almost like build a story and tell people's stories as you go along. And then the game kind of just bolsters that up as well. So that's been my favorite part, I think, is going from year one to year three, is understanding that as all things, it's always the people. And so I can talk about the game, I can talk about the stats as much as I want, but it's the players. And that is a really cool part as being a color and an analyst, is that I get to talk about the way that they do the things and admire their skill and the hard work that they've put in as individuals. And that will translate on the field. So that's been something that I've been trying to change the way that I call a little bit more to reflect that, because it's what I enjoyed when I was a player. I loved when an analyst knew my stats, but I loved even more when they knew my story and got to talk about who I was on air more than they talked about what I did.
That's very true. Did you enjoy when I kept bringing up that you and Katie Burge were friends on the every time you play
Are you
UCF?
kidding? Katie and I still text probably every week, all the time. I'm like, oh, Elo's on that air again.
I'm telling
We
you,
always
that's.
missed, we loved going head to head with each other because we knew you'd bring up the fact that we really
I
weren't
mean,
at all.
I listen. We're still at some point around your world traveling. We got to get the two of you. I told her this too recently that we're gonna at some point. You two, we got to come to terms here on a podcast episode with the two of you. So
To be fair, I don't know if you know this. Katie's my financial advisor now.
I'm not surprised based on the work she's been doing. I didn't know if that was public knowledge, but now we do. There you go.
Now
There,
we do.
that's
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you always trust your friends with your money, so they say.
that means she's your agent.
I wish Katie was my agent. I get way more deals. Katie's way more personable than I am.
Maybe I need to talk to her about her being my financial advisor at that point. No, she's the best. Give her a shout out there. I want to talk about this tournament you are calling because it's a pretty good field. And let me ask you about this year's version of South Florida. Everybody always talks about the pitching. We'll talk Peyton Dixon, but I want your thoughts on this offense here. It looks like an offense that's got some potential here for in the last couple of years. There's some pop. There's some dramatics. They've scored a ton of runs late in games. The Friday game I saw against Penn State, they were down 4-0. Next thing you know, they scored 12 in the 2 innings and run ruled Penn State. Give me your thoughts on this Bulls offense here in 2025.
I mean, I've been so excited. I think that ever since Coach Ken Erickson brought in Lisa Novice off of South Carolina, that she just needed a year or two to really kind of get her hitting philosophy involved with those players, especially such young players. And so this year it's been really exciting to see the likes of like a Jamia Nelson step up, Dania Brooks, and Alex Wilkes getting, the player of the week honors from the American. Obviously, the pitching staff is going to be the USF pitching staff. You always know that they're going to, as long as they can keep low scoring runs, they've always had an opportunity to win. But this is the year that it feels that like offensively, USF is very dangerous. And I like to see that they're more aggressive than I've seen in previous years. I think with Olivia Elliott, the transfer from UCF, she brings a lot of speed and power at the top of the lineup, along with Lexi Galligani as a junior. You've got the two of them batting plus 300, plus 350 as your top of your lineup. And then Alex Wilkes with 13, 14 RBIs in 10 games. It's something that it's what you dream of as an offensive producer, and it's strong all the way down in the lineup. If your 9 hole is a power switch hitter and Kathy Garcia Soto, like you must have an insane amount of depth in there. Josie Foreman and Alana Rivera coming in as fifth-year seniors, two of only three players to have ever been to postseason with the USF team. It's something that's really cool to watch that experience kind of trickle down into the young players and allow the young players to really thrive. So I think it's cool. We're seeing a rise of some freshmen in the young Pierce that they've got out there in the outfield. And it's really cool to watch. I think USF has always been known for their defense and their pitching staff, but it's really cool to watch this team now outscoring opponents like 46-6 or something ridiculous in the bottom of the fourth. They're a team that's not waiting until the fifth, the sixth, the seventh inning to make it happen. They're getting through the lineup once, maybe, and then they're becoming offensively productive, which, as a coach, you got to love to see it.
A little variety on that offense to go along with this pitching staff. led by Peyton Dixon. Talk about what you've seen so far from Peyton Dixon and the rest of the arms, because she's not alone. You've got some other arms now, then perhaps a deep staff maybe that they haven't had in a while as well.
Yeah, I think for the first time ever that I've been there and been with the program, you've got a three deep staff. Peyton Dixon, obviously, the senior has come in and she is someone, or redshirt junior perhaps, who's been there for a long time and it shows. Her spin is disgusting. From the left hand, especially a lefty-lefty matchup, she's devastating. Throwing the ball like 65, 66 miles an hour with a true east-west curveball. And then she does something that I used to love talking about with my pitching coach, which is basically angling your pitches. So not calling it just a rise ball or calling it a drop ball. It's taking your curveball and say you're seeing a swing that has a slight dip, taking your curveball and running it up, right? So you're working not only with your actual cardinal directions, your north, south, east, west, but actually working on your diagonals as well. So she has a really good opportunity and has the skill to do that with her pitches because they break so well. And then when she has a changeup and it's on, it's really, really hard to differentiate the two. So I think that's what's been making her the most effective at throwing the full games for USF. Obviously went in, started the game against Michigan, who they have the chance now to place them again this weekend, only lost 1-0. And we saw the introduction of the freshman in Ann Long. She's someone who's really exciting. I actually gave her pitching lessons when she was like 9, not claiming credit for her being super
Wow.
successful. I gave her like 6 months of pitching lessons, her and her younger sister. But she was someone that like she worked so hard. And I always stayed in contact with her family, with her dad in particular. And when she went to my same high school, so I got to go out and watch some of her high school games. Her dad reached out to me when she committed to USF and was like, it's so cool to see Anne like kind of go in that direction and be inspired to go to some of these schools. And then when she got there to actually be a strong, I think 1, 2, 3 along with Belsarja. So she's again higher velo, a heavy drop ball down. She's mixing her curveball in really, really well to lefties, which is scary sometimes from a right-handed pitcher. And then Belsarja coming in, she's a JUCO pitcher of the year. You've got her, she's gonna be pinpoint accurate, not overwhelming with speed, but really devastating with spin, working a drop curve away. And then that's what USF wants. They want pitches that stay hard down so that they can hit into those double plays and put the defense to work. So that's what I've seen primarily calling from the booth, which what do I know? But that's a pretty cool three-way punch between those three because you have so much variety and variability between those three that at some point you're going to have a really good matchup with a hitter that you have a strong pitcher in the circle that can handle it.
I think it's a team that's under the radar in the American. I think, obviously Florida Atlantic, Jordan Clark, they've got a great team with a great pitching staff, Gabby Sacco and Autumn Courtney, and Jayton Martinez, who you know as well, has been a big factor for them as a lefty over there down that staff. Ainsley Lambert's become one of the top closers in the sport. They're the defending regular season champions. You've got teams like Wichita State. I don't have to tell you, it's just a typical Christy Breadbender team that can rake and then have some pitching there with Chloe Barber, among others. And North Texas has a good pitcher there with Rodney DeLong and company. East Carolina, they have the freshman Frost, who just knocked off Casey Ricard and Boston twice, who was in the top 25 ranking. This seems like a banner year for the American, who I think has a shot to be a top 5 league this year in the sport, especially with the Pac-12 no longer involved. And you know this, I've always said the Americans decided by pitching. And I don't think it's any different. This might be a deep year for the American in pitching.
I anticipate it. I think we've seen the entrance of a lot of great pitching coaches. I know Elizabeth Hightower has joined the staff at FAU, is working with their pitchers. No surprise there, obviously, that she's going to build.
Yeah, her and Nicole Newman, the two of them, yeah.
Are insane. It's amazing. I think that it's the coolest thing to see athletes entering now the coaching sphere that we have really, really strong resumes of having played and coming back in, especially so young. I think a lot of coaches have entered a little bit later, and you're getting the opportunity now for young players who've been there to be working with these pitchers. And it's something that's really, really cool to see. ECU again picking up a new pitching coach as well, a left-handed pitcher from Ohio State.
Lexi Hanley,
really well for them, Lexi Hanley. And it's just really cool to see that. And I think you're right. I think the development of pitchers now, especially in the era of technology, it's really difficult sometimes to stay fresh and stay new and feel like you're bringing something to the table that no one's seen and that no one can hit when they've probably watched film of you for hours and hours prior to actually seeing you step on the mound. I know I felt that way, and I was in kind of like maybe a young era of technology where not everyone was using it. They might not have been using it as effectively. I don't think it's the case anymore. I think everyone has the ability to scout and see what you have. So it's cool to see that this American conference is still relying on the strength of pitchers, but I don't think they're relying on aces anymore. I think you're starting to see the emergence of a two-way punch, a three-way punch of 2 to 3 different pitchers that are not carbon cutouts of each other, are very different ideologically, perhaps, in the way that they pitch. And in that way, it's really hard for a team to maybe jump on them in 2 to 3 innings and then change up the view. And then you're getting a different look with different spin, different speed. And that's what I think is what we're seeing, especially from an FAU, especially from Wichita State, someone who's always pitched by staff, pitched by committee. And it's going to be the big bats that win it. So I think that's really cool for USF, who has been predicted third or fourth down in the conference now for the last couple of years, to have the power in the bats. Because I think that's what's always kind of kept them from sliding up and competing with the likes of maybe the Wichita States, with the Houstons that have left, and even the UCFs that always had a little bit stronger bats to go along with their pitching staff.
You're right. And USF, by the way, ranked number 4 in the D1 softball top 25 mid-major poll, so they're rising up there. I know they've gotten some votes elsewhere. They are the host for the American Conference Championship this year. You will not be there. You'll be watching from afar, which is going to be
From
weird.
Tokyo, I fear.
But so I'm going to ask you this now. What if for any pitcher that's going to pitch in that American Conference Championship in May at USF, what is the key to being successful in that ballpark?
Oh my gosh. The down the lines, you got to be careful of the deep pop-up that goes out, right? I know it's only 190 on the corners, and with the height of the fence, it used to be a little bit stronger, I would say, with some flatter swings. We're seeing a lot more of the just the high balls that are hit these days. And that's a dangerous park to be pitching in when you've got the wind tunnels that funnel out towards right center and left center, and then the shortened fences on the corners, right? You're not going to, it's not a triples park. It's really hard to hit the ball down the line and leg out a triple in that park. You can't really push it. But as the pitcher, you have a soft backstop, you've got shortened corners, you've got interesting little quirks that are happening along the field. But I think more than anything, it's longevity. You know, you're going to come and throw in Florida in the heat in what is going to be probably a pretty hot May. And it's, can you throw multiple games back to back to back? That's what we've seen in tournaments past. We saw Tulsa drop because they didn't have the longevity of pitching staff 2 years prior. And that's just what it requires. So especially if you're pitching by committee and you've got 2 to 3 strong pitchers, you have a good opportunity going into the conference tournament to secure your berth that way, by having the strength of pitching staff to carry you through it.
Of course, Tulsa, as you mentioned, Tulsa, Moore is still there. Remember, 2 years ago, we were there for the American Conference Championship. Tulsa made that surprising run to the championship game on with her arm. So she's back. Do you think that experience, having that experience in her, could benefit somebody like that has pitched there before in that regard?
I think any experience is good experience, always. Even, again, it's like win or fail. There is no failing in the sport. It's win or win some more, and you just win later, right? It's when you decide that you're going to use the knowledge that you've collected and how you're going to use it. Are you going to use it intelligently, or are you going to try and, use the wrong tools to do the wrong things? So I think it's always in those opportunities that you're going to have the people step up that are on E. It's never about how much you can give, but it's whether you're doing it correctly. And if you're doing it with the right support, I think you can get through a lot of things. I know my final years at college, I was running on E, but it was my teammates behind me that kept me cooking, So from those experiences, you can take your hard hits and take them how you want them, but it's the people around you and whether you choose to stand up and continue pushing through that I think will carry them through the tournament. And especially as you continue going and as professional softball continues to develop, I really want to see more mid-major pitchers come in. I want to see them come in and be successful. We've seen a lot come through now that maybe weren't your household names in college, that are now always dominating the professional sphere. And that is, I think, more of a testament to the way that they learn and the way that they work than anything that has to do with skill and talent.
When you reflect back, I still get people complimenting about the studio. Do you, Allison Kime, Morgan Uber was the host, Ryan contributed to that pregame show and then postgame stuff, the studio show from the American from USF. When you reflect on that experience, what do you think of? Because that was pretty cool. Not many could say they did that.
I think it was amazing. I think that we take for granted a lot of times the things that we see on television because we watch a lot of sports broadcasting, right? If you've been a kid in the United States of America, you've probably been watching football Sunday every single day. You've been watching basketball. You've been watching these usually guys sit at this table and talk about the sport and talk about it. And it shows their depth of knowledge. It's not often that you've seen an entire staff of, especially women that have played at a high level in softball, sit and get the opportunity to talk about those players in that way. So I think it was a really cool experience for us because it got to test our knowledge, got to test the way that we speak about the game and know the game, and then how we share information that's relevant to each of us. So, like, I'm obviously going to be a lot more aware of pitching statistics, maybe of the names of the pitchers around the country and what I noticed about maybe their spin styles, the way that they throw, their mechanics. But like Allison might have noticed something different. She was a little bit more defensive prowess. She noticed a lot of interesting things. You're going to have a lot of knowledge across the table. And at some point, you're kind of like a trivia team. If you get a really strong team of 3 to 4 people, you've got everything covered. So I think that was amazing to have that opportunity because it tested my talents as a broadcaster. But then as a player, imagine how cool it is to sit down and watch someone at this table talk about your team, about the work that you guys have put in to get you into that tournament, and then talk about all of the things that you've done up to it and know that they're not just reading your stats off of a piece of paper. Like they took the time to learn about you and know who you are and label you as a player of impact for your team. So I found that was really, really cool looking back on it because I wish that I'd had those opportunities, I think, as an athlete. And it's really cool to see us almost making it normalized. Now the athletes of tomorrow and the athletes of the years after that will hopefully have those experiences moving forward because we saw that they were successful. It was really well received, and people want to see that kind of content.
1,000%. I hope they do it again this year. If they do, that'll be fun. I just hope that we see that across the board, actually, in the sport there. All right, let me ask you this because I've wanted to ask you this since last summer. How would Georgina Corrick, the analyst, have analyzed Georgina Corrick, the captain's decision to let Georgina Corrick pitch the last inning of Athletes Unlimited, knowing that her fourth place spot was on the line? If she didn't pitch that inning, you would have locked it up, but you decided to pitch. And I remember the broadcasters, Eric Collins was breaking it down. I think if you would have walked somebody or two or something, you would have dropped out. That was a gutsy decision. So give me how would Corrick, the analyst, have analyzed Corrick's decision there, Captain?
Well, I remember I told you how I am really big about building a story, right?
Yep.
Like it is so much for me that what we do is storytelling. Everything that you do every single day is storytelling. It's just whether it's an interesting story or not. And so when I drafted that team, Team Orange, I had so many stories I wanted to build. I had so many connections that I wanted to create. And so like my first pair was Sachelle and Charlize Palacios, right? Both of them absolute powerhouse catchers, powerhouse hitters, but separately they were never as strong as they were together, right? Their sisterhood connection was insane. So I knew that when I wanted to create my team, I threw so well to both of those catchers, right? I knew that I had a great opportunity if either one of them were behind the plate for me to feel comfortable. So that was like my first connection I wanted to get right off the bat. So I went for Charlize Palacios and then ended up getting Sash maybe 2 or 3 rounds later. I knew another big connection that I wanted to make was all of my retirees, right? I knew that Sam Fisher hanging up her cleats, Haley McClenny hanging up her cleats, Sachelle Palacios hanging up her cleats, and Peyton St. George. Those were people that deserved stories, right? Because they'd written such amazing ones already. They deserved a really, really good ending. So I had like that column of people that I wanted to create. I had my corners, right? I knew that my Sis Bates and my Sam Fishers worked amazing together. I knew that Aubrey Leach and Andrea Filler worked really well together. You've got incredible knowledge and leadership on the right side of my field. You've got absolute freaking like sheer joy and happiness on the left side of my field. It was something that once I built those connections, it was easy then to fill in my gaps. Megan Wiggins, Morgan Zirkle, some of the oldest and most experienced outfielders in the game, right? Carly Spade, someone who's setting home run records directly behind Jocelyn Allo that may not have been getting the spotlight of Jocelyn Allo because it was right on her coattails. So I was able to build this insane team behind me that it didn't really matter whether we won or lost. It didn't really matter whether I won and got a medal. I knew Taylor McQuillan had thrown to Sachelle Palacios in Team Mexico, right? That connection was easy to make. So for me, it was more about building those connections and letting the story write itself. So I think as an analyst, that's kind of really cool because I would have been in the booth, like watching all of these puzzle pieces kind of slide together and it felt seamless, But I was like, I didn't have any fingernails by the end of the draft. I was so stressed about everything that was happening, trying to make all the right pieces fit together, that when we got in and we started playing our games and we didn't win, we lost our first two games. And it was really disheartening, I think, as a captain, because you take this really personally. You built a team that you basically promised these players, I've built the best team that I could for us to win, and you don't. And so I'm like questioning myself. I'm talking to Caroline Hardy, my facilitator, being like, what have I done wrong? Like, what can I do better? Like, I want to be better for these girls. And then I like looked at my players and they were having the best time. Like we were sitting and having Mario Party nights and like hanging out together. And we threw a retirement party for all the retirees. And they all came up to me and none of them ever talked about losing the game, but they talked about, oh my God, like this is the dream team. I can't believe you got Haley McClenny as your center fielder. You've got Peyton St. George getting her the chance to like start her final game. And like that was something that no one could really take away from me. So I didn't really know actually how far point wise I was away from medaling when I went to that final game. I was more just determined to kind of just have a really good last game for my team. And so
You
that was
didn't know. You didn't
I had no
know.
idea. I had to take my Apple Watch. I had my Apple Watch on when we were warming up for the game, and I was getting all these messages from my mom being like, "I've crunched the numbers, I'm doing the math," and I had to take it off because I couldn't stress about that because I had so many other things going on, that I had to unplug in that moment. And so when Taylor McQuillan came up to me, she was actually the one that was like, "I think you should take the ball. You're 4 points away from medaling," and I was like, "Okay." And I'm like sitting there with my facilitator, and she's like, yeah, I didn't want to say anything to you because Taylor was throwing so well, like shutting out this Amanda Lorenz team. Obviously, Amanda Lorenz went on to win the entire thing. She'd built this stacked gold team that had been all of the players that had helped facilitate her win the entire way through the league. And they like were kind of like the undefeateds. They were the people you had to go and win. And we went in, and I was like, Taylor McQuillan, if you're beating them, you beat them. And she's like, no, you need like 4 points to win. You should go in. And so that final inning, I went in for what the final two outs, final out or something. And I had to do the thing where I was like, I would throw a pitch and then time blew so that Haley McClenny could get her
Right.
standing ovation. Sam Fisher could get her standing ovation. Sashelle Palacios, I changed her for her sister Charlize so that she could get her standing ovation. So I felt like I had so many other things going on. I couldn't worry about the points. And then I got the one out that I needed in order
Yes.
to medal. And the look on my teammates' faces, like there's a picture of me like this at the award ceremony because I didn't know that I'd won it or not. And everyone was telling me, they're like, we think we did the math right. We think that you got medaled. And I was like, I can't worry about that right now. There's too many other things going on. And then Carly Spade hit that like absolutely amazing home run. And I was like, that's it. My story's done. If I was an analyst, that would have been the coolest story anyone's ever told.
That's pretty good. That's a really good story there. And trust me, I was nervous for you. Plus, I had you on my personal fantasy team because me and Vic did a 4-on-4, and of course, I beat him. And you were a part of that. You and Lexi Kilfoy, I think I had on my team, so I did pretty well.
Great picks.
Thank you, appreciate you on that. So, but I was just super glad you got fourth because you earned it. But that's a great story, and you did the right thing there. So, you know what? I take it back. You did the right thing. You pitched it, all worked out, right?
Would you have
Uh,
done it differently?
I wouldn't have pitched, but I'm a coward, clearly.
You're a weenie. Come on, get on the
I am
mound.
clearly. No, props to you. It was fun. That was dramatic. And you're right, Lorenz was incredible.
Oh,
Uh,
and she deserved that gold medal more than anything. And seeing her being one of the only top 8 picks that was not a pitcher for the AUSL
right.
draft, that makes sense. And it's a great pick by the Bandits. Stacy did her thing with the Bandits over there.
She
I'm a little jealous. I think that's one of my favorite color combinations of that team. Um,
really.
yeah, so I'm a little jealous of Sarah. I'll have to buy her jersey.
See, maybe exchange. Could be that's an exchange call
Yeah.
there. Yeah, that's interesting. Loren's still on top of her game. Might be still one of the best hitters in the world. So she's
Oh, absolutely.
like I remember that day. Everybody pretty much like, yeah, she's gonna win this. That's why you provided the drama. You provided the drama. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I love to make something happen.
Beautiful. We're hoping for some drama this weekend in Tampa. There usually is when Michigan and South Florida plays. You've played and broadcasted that matchup. What is it about that matchup that always brings tight, intense, low-scoring games? I know great pitching's part of that, but I even talked to Bonnie Toll earlier this week. They love playing in Tampa. A lot of Michigan fans come there to Tampa. but they always get tested. Give me your thought. What's it like, Michigan, South Florida, for those that are going to watch this weekend?
I mean, I think it's history versus history. You know, even Bonnie Thull spent 28, 29 years under obviously the legend of Hutch. And so the Michigan program is a program that has so much history and tradition built into it. And the only other program I've met that matches that energy is Ken Erickson, right? So playing under him, Team USA head coach of USF softball for 28, 29 years as well. They're people that know the game so well. And so you're always having a tight scoring game. You have a lot of almost like espionage. It's like this kind of fun of like, I know you really well, you know me really well. Are we going to reverse psychology each other? Are we going to like, am I going to start Durkowski for Michigan, who's been their absolute ace for the last 2 years? Am I going to have, Peyton Dixon, the ace for USF, go head to head for them? Or am I going to start that freshman Ann Long, who came in and threw 4 phenomenal innings against Michigan? Am I going to throw Belle Sarja? You don't know. It's one of those things that I think it's always really exciting because it's unpredictable. No one really knows what's going to happen because what you think is going to happen never does. And like we've had walk-off wins on a wild pitch, we've had walk-off wins on an error. Like there's been all these like crazy close games. My first collegiate game as an athlete was against Michigan, and I gave up 2 back-to-back home runs to Michigan. And Ken Erickson walked out to the mound, and I was like sobbing. I was ready to come out of the game. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm embarrassing. Take me out of here. And Coach Jess came out as well, and she's like, you've thrown on bigger stages than this. You'll get yourself out of it. And we ended up winning 3-2. And those were the only 2 runs that I gave up were back-to-back bombs into the batting cages in the Lawler batting facility. So that was very humbling for me. But I learned from it and I got better from it. And so there's always these like really fun and exciting games that happen with Michigan, Wisconsin as well, another great team coming in. Even Troy, I went on a visit to Troy when I was, 14, 15 years old. It's one of those things that like the softball community is so small that when you get a chance to bump heads with people that you always bump heads with, it's exciting. I wouldn't go as far to say a rivalry, but it is like it's a clashing of these like giants of the sport.
Well, you also got Louisville. Zabala, who's having a good start for the year for Louisville.
Mhm.
Louisville and South Florida have a history in softball. They're going back to the days where they were in the Big East together, and I think even CUSA prior to that. Ken knows all about that. I'm
Mhm.
sure he's shared it. So it's a good field. It's a good field. Kent State is in that field. What are you looking forward to the most? We talked USF Michigan. What are you looking forward to seeing this weekend in this tournament?
I think I'm really excited to see some like star players kind of emerge. I think the first couple of weeks of like the chaos that is February, that is opening 2 weekends, you can't really tell who's going to be it yet. We've seen some it girls kind of arise and then they kind of fall off. But I mean, Alex Wilkes for USF is having an absolutely insane start for USF. I think Char Lorenz, I believe, for Louisville is having an amazing start. Michigan, again, is having to kind of fill that hole that Bonnie Thull left, or Kiki Thull left, pardon me. And so there's a lot of these like big question marks for these teams. And it's almost like exciting to see who's going to fill it. There's these vacuums that are left, whether it's by graduating seniors, whether it's by players just needing to step up for their team. It's these vacuum fillers. And so I'm very excited to always see like who it is because sometimes it's so unexpected, and then other times it's like it feels natural. So I think when I'm watching these games and calling these games, it's really cool to see not only them step up as athletes, but like step up as leaders and start to like lead teams very well. And when you have a player like that, you talked about Alyssa DePaula, obviously at Louisville. She's someone that when we spoke to the head coach this morning, they said you can build a team around a player like that. And every good team in the history that I can think of has had a core player or players that they can build a culture around. And that's so important because it can't be coach every single day, right? Coach kind of builds the lineups and they can do all the guidance that they can. But at a certain point, one of the players is going to have to step in. Some of the players are going to have to step in and become the true leaders of a team. So that's what I'm excited for this weekend. It's to see who really steps up for that leadership position.
Yeah, Michigan, a lot of high expectations for them. Obviously, after a good year last year with 40 wins, Maddie Erickson's a talented offensive player. Should be a lot of fun. And I think we're going to learn a lot about South Florida, not just this weekend, but the following weekend when they go to Austin, Texas, in that Texas tournament. Ken Erickson will be taking his team on the road there against the number one ranked team in the country in Texas. But check out South Florida Showdown this weekend. ESPN Plus will have every game of USF versus Michigan, Wisconsin, Louisville, Kent State, and Troy will be on ESPN Plus. Ryan Urquhart will call every game because he doesn't leave the press box, right? He just lives there, right? Do you guys
He
pay?
lives every time I've gone, he lives under the desk. So I think they
Well,
have they have like mouse traps and stuff under there to keep him out, and he keeps disabling them.
that makes sense. That's all the time I see him is like everywhere there, and you'll be joining him for some of those games throughout the weekend as well, and then you'll be off before you know it, off to Japan to play the pro season. Then you'll be back for AUSL. But I enjoyed this traditional get together. We always do this before you leave the country. At least I gave you a week's to spare this time to pack instead of last year where I think you were packing as you were recording. But hey, good luck this year in Japan, and then look forward to seeing you back in the States before you know it for the AUSL, a historic year. Congrats on the draft pick. That's going to be tremendous. And thanks for always coming on. You're one of our favorite guests to say it, and I hope we do this every year. So, maybe even multiple times a year. Who
You
knows?
said I've got another 10 in me, so you've got at least another 10 years of podcasts coming on.
Okay, there you go. The challenge is on. I
I'll
got to
hold you
keep
to
up with
that.
you. I will hold you. All right, we'll deal. I'll talk to your financial advisor about that too. So,
Take it up with
uh,
her. I hear she's a real hard, like she's a hard case to crack.
yes, that's true. She is. That is very true, Katie. There. That's Georgina Corrick. Right here. Check her out this week on ESPN Plus, and of course, follow her throughout her global experience playing in Japan and then in AUSL this summer. Thanks for doing this, bud. Be safe. All right.
Awesome. Thanks.